Hey friends, Laurel from Macanudo here, and welcome to my Cigar 101. Today we are going to be talking about different types of cutters. Some of you may already know this, and that's fine, but some of you may learn something new or interesting. So either way, I hope you enjoy it. So I am going to be using 4 cigars for my examples here. Of course, we have our 1968, our Cru Royale, our Macanudo Maduro, and soon available to everyone, the Inspirato Green. So we're going to start with the most popular cut, which is the straight cut or the guillotine. So for that, I have my nifty little Macanudo cutter. Now, the straight cut is the most widely used one. It's very simple and it doesn't require a ton of precision. But the big thing to remember is not to overcut. And there's a couple different reasons for that. First and foremost, you're just wasting cigar. Don't overcut. Leave all the cigar that you can and get as much out of it as possible. But more importantly, you actually can risk unraveling the cigar. So if you overcut past the curve of the cap, so if you look here, you can see it start to curve just a little bit. You don't need to cut any deeper than that. Like I said, it can actually open up the cigar too much, and it's too area of a draw. You risk unraveling it, and why not keep all the cigar that you can, right? So I'm gonna try to focus this in on the camera here, but you can see that the cap has a few different lines to it. I find that most cigars tend to have about 2 or 3 distinct lines at the cap, and you never need to cut deeper than that first line. It's always easier to correct an undercut. You can't come back from an overcut. It's like oversalting your food. You can always add more salt. You really can't take it out. So let's start with the first one. So just take the cap of the cigar and you can see how much I am not taking off here, and just shave the top of it. So that was a little bit of an undercut. And now you can see that it's just cut where it starts to taper, and you truly will not have that much cap left over. So I'm going to show you how much cap I have left over for frame of reference. So this is all that I took off. Don't overcut your cigars. So cigar number 1. Really, like I said, doesn't require too much precision, opens it up for a nice airy smoke without opening it up too much. So second, let's move on to the V-cut. So the V-cut is going to be a little bit more precise, and there's really not a ton of difference in the smoking experience. It's going to restrict the draw a little bit more. You're not going to get quite as much smoke drawing through the cigar simply because there isn't as much surface area that is cut. So it's really personal preference. I don't really ever have a V-cutter on me. So again, it's just you like it or you dislike it, whatever works for you. So for that one, let's use the Cru Royale. So for that, you are going to just line it up at the top. Make sure, if you can, you can put the cigar on the table to make sure that it's even. Otherwise, when you cut it, it can become a little skewed. And then with this particular cutter, it gives it a really nice Pac-Man appearance. So yes, that is the V cutter, very precise, and is really getting a little bit deeper into the cigar as opposed to that straight cut, which is just kind of shaving off the top. And then there is the punch cut. So the punch cut was originally created for a cigar with a short filler. So typically a premium cigar is going to be long filler, which means the tobacco is running from the cap to the foot. Now with a short filler cigar, it means the tobacco inside is short. It's smaller pieces. It's not running from the cap to the foot. So you can risk having some tobacco fall out. So with the punch cutter, it alleviates that because it doesn't actually take off the cap. It actually just puts a ring into it, so you're not going to get any tobacco flakes falling out into your mouth as you're smoking. And for that example, we are going to use the Macanudo 1968. I do not at least cannot locate one, a straight punch cutter in my house. So I have this nifty Macanudo lighter that has a punch cut built in the bottom. There's actually a fair amount of options out there that you can get a lighter and have the punch cut built in. So yeah, it's definitely a nice tool if you're looking to have less accessories jumbling around in your pocket for sure. So pretty straightforward. Take the punch cut, kind of try to line it up in the center of the cap to the best of your ability. And the big thing to remember with this one is don't just drive the punch into the cap of the cigar. You can definitely crack it, especially if the punch cutter is becoming dull. And on that note, if you are punching your cigar and you find that your cap is splitting, it's probably time to either sharpen or replace your punch cutter, because when it's dull, it can start to split the cap, and that's no good. So take it, and you just want to sort of spin your way into the cap of the cigar. Very simple. You see that? It's just a nice little precise ring. And then make sure you clean out the punch cut so you don't have tobacco in there for the next time you use it. And you're good to go. So as an example, let me show you how much came out from that one. Very, very little. So yeah. It's also going to restrict the draw a little bit more, but like I said, the intended purpose when the punch cut was created was for the mix fill or a short filler cigar. So it alleviates any of those tobacco flakes coming out as you're smoking it. And as a bonus, there are also cigar scissors. This is essentially the same as a guillotine cut or a straight cut, so I'm not going to do an example, but it's just worth noting that they are super cool. But I'm going to tell you my favorite kind of cut, and it is coming from really just pure laziness, I suppose. I have 1,000 cutters in my house, but it always seems that I am lacking a cutter when I need one. So I would say that a solid 90% of the time, I'm actually using my fingernail. So we're gonna go over the fingernail method. It works very well, with the exception of torpedoes or perfectos or like bellicosos. And also it's worth noting that the punch cut does not work for those. I've seen people actually V-cut a torpedo before. It can be a little tricky, so if you're feeling confident, it's doable, but I mean, why mess around? Just do a straight cut. And you know, torpedoes especially, I see a lot of overcutting. It takes a more skilled roller to do a taper tip, so why waste that by overcutting? Torpedo is going to be a little bit more intricate, but you really only need to cut about just the first little layer where you see the tobacco line. And again, you can undercut and then correct it by cutting more, but you can't take away that cut. So if you cut a torpedo and you find that the draw is a little bit restricted, you know, cut it again. If it's still restricted, cut it again. It really is going to be personal preference. It's how much smoke are you looking to get through that cigar, and what is comfortable for you to smoke. So again, just you feel it out, see what you like, see what works for you. But yeah, so just make sure you're saving those torpedoes, because the best rollers are making those for you, and you want to experience everything you can from that cigar. So yes, we're going to talk about the fingernail cut, because I typically do that about 90% of the time. So if we look at the Inspirato green here, again, we can see that first line on the cap. Very simple. Your nails don't have to be long. You just, you find where that crease is. So you find where that cap is meeting the rest of the cigar, and you put your fingernail under there, and you can kind of just peel off in one motion. And like I said, you know, I have a ton of cutters, but this is honestly the method that I use so often because it's easy. I don't have to dig around in my pocket or my purse, and it's surprisingly precise. So be slow with it. You don't want to overdo it, because again, you can kind of risk cracking that cap. Now, again, this is not taking off much more tobacco than the straight cut did. And you can see just the opening there. And so now that was just a little bit uneven, so I'm going to go clean up that cap just a little bit and tap it out. Make sure you don't have any flecks for when you're smoking it. And there you have it. Again, it's not the prettiest, but it is incredibly functional, and you know, you always have your fingernail on you, right? So let's look at that cut compared to the straight cut. Now, I will say that does not look too bad. So that is the fingernail shave as opposed to the guillotine cut. And then we have the punch cut, which is a very minimal opening. And then of course we have our Pac-Man V-cut. So I hope you guys found this helpful. Maybe you learned something. And if you have any questions on the cut specifically or any of the cigars that I featured, let me know. Stay safe, stay smoky, and I'll talk to you guys later.